Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Emily Nye, an instructor at SOLS, and I'll be presenting this writing workshop on behalf of the SOLS Graduate Writing Center at University of San Diego. If you're new to graduate school, and even if you're not, you've probably noticed that your professors require a lot of writing. That could be a challenge to anyone, but it's even harder if you haven't had to write a college paper in a while. Or if you're an international student and you're new to the United States. Whether you're new to our culture, new to your program, or you just like a skills refresher, this workshop is for you. There's so much we could cover. I had to really think about the most important skills that will help you progress through your graduate writing assignments. I narrowed the list to the most helpful categories: expectations, a review of the building blocks of good writing, the graduate school voice, types of writing you might be assigned, and how to use outside sources. Finally, we'll talk about how to develop good writing and study habits. So let's get started. To begin, let's outline some of the main differences between the writing you had to do as an undergraduate and the writing you have to do now. Many of you are in different kinds of master's programs, and some are in doctoral programs. While there are differences according to your discipline in writing projects, overall, these characteristics apply to all graduate writing. You'll notice right away that as a graduate student, you have a great deal more independence than you did as an undergraduate. By that, I mean your professors expect you to be able to work on your own, to be able to ask the right questions, and to develop the skills to answer those questions through your research. Don't worry. They don't expect you to conduct independent research overnight, but they do take you seriously as a sort of scholar in training who will contribute your own original voice to the ongoing research in your field. In undergraduate school, you were learning basic research skills, tools, practicing on short projects, but in graduate school, research is much more extensive. It has to be. There are so many questions to consider and so many studies that have gone into the making of each discipline's body of knowledge. You'll be expected to understand what you read and discuss and to use other scholars' ideas to support your own blossoming theories. Because of this, graduate writing contains more summary and less direct quoting. You'll be asked to show the relationship between studies and ideas, not just a book report of who said what. Another difference is that your grad school professors are professionals. They're scholars and researchers who write to share their feelings and their findings, to test their theories, and to connect with their peers. We'll get to genre differences in a few minutes, but for now, keep in mind that graduate writing is more lengthy, has different formats to follow, not just an essay, for example. You're being initiated into what we call your discourse community, your fellow scholars who expect you to write in your field's preferred format. Okay, that's a good start to help you see the big picture. But what about what I might call the little stuff? At a most basic level, is your writing clear? Do you feel you're successfully expressing what you want to say through your sentences and paragraphs? Okay, top sentence problems. What are your most common mistakes? I teach writing to students at all levels, from first-year undergraduate to dissertation coaching, and I see the fragment everywhere. I'll review the grammar rule while you read along. I suggest you find an online or hard copy handbook that you like to help reinforce or define the rules more clearly. A fragment, to start with, is an incomplete sentence. It's a group of words that need some other group of words in order to make sense. So here's the incorrect. He gave his mother an extravagant gift after the argument, in spite of everything. And noticed how I exaggerated the fragment. And to correct it, you would add the comma. In spite of everything, rearranging a little bit, he gave his mother an extravagant gift after the argument. Okay, here's another top sentence error. As our ideas become more complex, it's natural that our sentences become longer. But there are important rules about how to connect two parts of a compound sentence. A comma splice is when we have two separate sentences and they're joined with a comma instead of a period or semicolon. Writers often create comma splices when they use transitional words such as however, therefore, moreover. So here's an example, the incorrect. My intention was to take her out to dinner. However, I decided not to invite her out at all, after all. Now that may look correct, but it's actually a comma splice. My intention was to take her out to dinner, semicolon. However, comma, I decided not to invite her after all. So there are many ways to repair a comma splice. See if you can come up with a few more options to revise this kind of error. The third most common sentence problem is the run-on. We also call this a fused sentence. It usually happens when you're writing quickly and you haven't separated out two independent clauses or sentences. Repair a run-on by making two shorter sentences or inserting a conjunction like and or but after a comma. But don't just plop a comma between the two parts of the sentence. You risk creating another comma splice. As the example shows, she tried to sneak out of the house. Her mother saw her leaving. Notice how it all runs together. She tried to sneak out of the house, comma, but her mother saw her leaving. Back to the basics of parts of speech. Every sentence needs a subject, a noun, and a verb, the action. The pronoun takes the place of the noun. But what if it's not clear who you're referring to? Check out the example here. In this example, we have, when Jonathan finally found his dog, he was so happy. Well, who was happy? The dog or Jonathan? They were probably both pretty happy. But the correct answer is, Jonathan was so happy when he finally found his dog. I suppose all languages have some confusing words, but English has a bunch. And we have short words like it's and it is. They look the same and sound the same, so even your spell checker won't catch them. We can't even begin to list them here, but you can start making your own list of easily confused words. Now, as for lack of parallel structure, we call this faulty parallelism, and it occurs when two or more parts of a sentence are similar but not parallel, or in other words, grammatically similar in form. This occurs with paired constructions and items in a series. So notice in the incorrect example, he wanted to learn more about careers in programming, engineering, biochemist, and research scientist. Can you hear that that doesn't sound right? We're talking about two different things. So the correct way would be, he wanted to learn more about careers in programming, engineering, biochemistry, and research. So we made all of those regular nouns to name the kind of subject. If English isn't your first language, you might be more likely to have challenges with noun-verb agreement, singular and plural nouns, but even native English speakers make mistakes with these kinds of problems. The Souls Graduate Writing Center can provide you with great websites to help you understand usage and grammar rules. Okay, now that we've reviewed some sentence problems, let's take on the paragraph. The paragraph is the building block of all writing. When you heard the term coherence and applied that to writing, we're talking about whether a paragraph focuses on just one idea with related subclaims or points. Every paragraph needs a strong topic sentence to serve as a sort of motor to drive the paragraph. Each sentence should support the main idea, woven together by effective transitions like in contrast, next, or finally. The way we organize our paragraphs determines how our audience understands the information we express. So there are several basic formats for arranging our paragraphs. One is a sort of old to new information, general to specific, and specific to general. First, in Academic Writing for Graduate Students, a book by John Swales and Christine Feek. The authors explain these different formats. When we start with the old information early in the paragraph, it establishes a content connection backward and a forward content link that establishes context. You might be writing this way intuitively, but it's helpful to think about it consciously. We begin with the familiar, we repeat something from the previous paragraph or sentence, and this leads us to new information or the conclusion. Next, consider whether you should arrange your paragraph by first introducing a familiar general statement and then elaborating with more specific details as you write. You'll follow a general to specific paragraph format in many assignments. You might start with a general definition and become more and more specific, or a general statement of purpose or research question. It makes sense in many contexts to work towards the more specific and often the new information. On the other hand, specific to general also has some good uses. Sometimes it's better to start with a very specific piece of information and explain the opposite direction. If you start with a specific fact, for example, your paragraph will work its way to a broader conclusion. In this case, in subjects like history or medicine or law, it helps to start with a case study and then lead to the more general conclusion about what it means. Which is better? It's hard to say. What's better is what best addresses the purpose of your assignment and ultimately connects most effectively with your audience. On a final note, I would say avoid super long paragraphs, avoid super short paragraphs. Okay, now that we've addressed sentences and paragraphs, what should your writing voice sound like? When you read academic journals, you probably notice that the language is often formal. It uses big words and follows a certain wordy style. Without going into too much detail here, academic discourse has evolved over the years to take on this sort of intellectual tone. We don't recommend that you just imitate this type of academic language, because to be honest, it's not all good, effective writing. Along the same idea, some people think that just because you're in graduate school, you should use lots of big words with complicated syllables. You can develop your writing voice by studying good samples. The best advice I can give you is to listen to how scholars speak and write in your field. Before you can sound like one of them, develop your own writing voice. Practice your skills, perfect your errors. Do know that the academic writing voice tends to use an objective tone and is often in the third person, such as he or she. However, first person is often acceptable. Ask your professor if you're not sure. Building on what we've covered, our next topic is how to bring these skills together so you're really understanding and addressing your assignments. This requires an understanding of genre. So, what is genre? Each of these formats has a type of assignment attached to it. So it serves a function and it follows a conventional kind of look. So if you think about the summary response, the literature review, the proposal, a study, an abstract, a thesis, or a conventional dissertation, they all have a particular look and a particular function. Let's break it down and look at three main genres: writing summaries and critiques, problem process solution, and data commentary. As you've probably noticed, not only do you have to read a great deal in graduate school, but your professors expect you to summarize what others have said. So in other words, you might have to write a summary response assignment, an exam question, or in class, be expected to be able to summarize what some theorist or study is saying. The literature review, the thesis or dissertation also requires lots of summary and critique. You'll get plenty of practice in this genre, as it's a smaller part of many larger projects. Since our work as academics is usually about solving some kind of problem, you'll certainly need to be good at discussing articles, presenting proposals, and stating your case. Writing in the problem solution format is an expectation of graduate writing. Similar to writing summaries, problem solution can be a smaller format within a larger project. Finally, you'll need to be able to explain data. You don't have to be a wizard with data programs, but it is expected that you'll analyze results and be able to share them with your reader. You don't have to learn this overnight. Ask your professors, look at lots of examples, and practice. As a graduate student, it's important that you feel comfortable working with scholarly and other kinds of sources. So when you're learning to summarize, there's a couple of skills that will really help you. We're going to talk about summarizing, paraphrasing, and correctly citing. So, how do you summarize and explain ideas, including data? We've saved the best for last. Being a good summarizer and paraphraser isn't easy, but with practice, you'll get the hang of it. So, if you'll notice, for a summary, we put down the main idea in our own words. Focus only on the main points. It should be shorter than the original. It provides a broad overview, and we always, always, always cite it. The paraphrase is also putting ideas in our own words. It condenses a main source. It takes a broader overview. It's shorter than the original. It may include some details, and that's the difference. And similar to the summary, we always, always, always cite. Some people think summarizing is merely repeating what's been said, but it's much more. You're expected to be able to size up an article quickly and assess how it connects to your subject of study. In other words, details are probably not as important, but the essence of the idea is very important. Not only that, you need to be able to explain how ideas connect. Does one study illustrate a concept? Are you showing a contrast in findings? Are you providing additional evidence? So you're looking at the similarities, you're looking at the causes and effects, and you're looking at the implications. Okay, how to begin? Well, first, follow these steps. It all begins with understanding the source material. You may have to read it several times. It's also helpful to analyze the genre and understand the purpose of the source. So if you have to write a literature review, look at what the format holds, and then you'll know kind of what's expected of you. As you look at the original, skim it first. Look for subheadings and divisions. Read and take notes. List the section main points in your own words and list those support points. Look at what seems to be the most important or the strongest claim or conclusion. Once you understand the original text, take your idea processing to the next level. Use your own words, include only relevant support and detail. Don't include the technical terms. You don't really have to paraphrase those. Create a smooth flow of ideas. Don't quote much, and always identify the source author. So here are a couple of examples. This one is a summary of one article. This is the article by Alexander and Link. The writer just summarized the basic ideas that were important, condensing a much longer article to a paragraph. So take a look at this for a minute. Notice how Alexander and Link are cited at the beginning, and then we see the main ideas about the stigma of mental illness. This is also a good example of showing the relationship between different parts of the study. This example illustrates how you might synthesize or bring together several summaries that deal with the same topic. The article cites 3 studies that contribute different findings. This example also illustrates a typical summary response exercise. The second paragraph provides the writer's response to the article summarized in the first paragraph. Notice how transition words like ultimately and as well as help string together the ideas. You're probably wondering, well, yes, okay, I'm getting that paraphrasing idea, but how do I cite my sources? Citing sources is a skill in itself that we will cover in additional SOLS presentations. For now, I'd say become familiar with APA style. It's widely, but not exclusively used in SOLS. Our Copley Library has extremely helpful references on the topic, and the Writing Center can also answer your questions. As we conclude, we've covered lots of topics to get you ready to write. Perhaps the most important advice we can give you is to really pay attention, careful attention to the comments you receive on your writing. Learn what works and doesn't work for you and for your professors. Developing those good writing habits will go a long way in your graduate career and beyond. So know yourself well. Make a list of the things that you seem to have more trouble with. Assemble a playlist of online resources or a list of resources, a go-to list for when you have those errors. Collect samples of good writing. Know the Copley Library. Library is one of your best friends, and get feedback. Use the Graduate Writing Center at SOLS. I hope this has been helpful. When you put it all together, I hope that now you feel you are ready to write. Good luck to you.